So unfortunately, I'm making this video today because I'm sick with a lucky girl syndrome, and nobody wants to talk about why you get infected with lucky girl syndrome, and nobody talks about how people get cured of lucky girl syndrome. So today I'm going to tell you about how I infect myself with lucky girl syndrome every single day and how it actually stays because I never cure it. So I wanted to start this off by talking about this book that I'm reading called Design Your Life. It is by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans, and it is based on a course at Stanford about how to design the life that you want. One really insightful passage that I read from this was, curiosity makes everything new. It invites exploration. It makes everything play. Most of all, curiosity is going to help you get good at being lucky. It's the reason some people see opportunities everywhere. And that passage in particular made me really think deeply about lucky girl syndrome and why some people are lucky while others are not. And one of my friends was actually recently seeing this guy and she just kept telling me all of the unfortunate things that have happened in his life, and she just told me, I just feel like he's really unlucky, and it's not necessarily his fault, but she was like, I don't really want to be attached to the unluckiness because it feels like he's just really unlucky. And she was like, I can't explain it, but it really just says something about his overall character and his mindset towards life that he's unlucky. And I was actually thinking, you know what, it is his fault that he's unlucky, because I truly believe that there are things that you can do in order to be lucky. There are, of course, unfortunate circumstances that might happen in your life that you may see as unlucky, but overall, I think you can do a lot to control and influence the luckiness that you come across in your life. So I'm going to tell you my 7 best tips to stay lucky, and we're using 7 because it's a lucky number, of course. And I'm going to include personal stories from my life that I think contributed to my luckiness. Tip number 1, if you want to get lucky girl syndrome, you need to be saying yes to everything. Now, of course, I think you don't need to say yes to quite literally everything. Like if you feel like you need a night in and you need to say no to one event here or there, then you should definitely be doing that, because of course, then you are actually inversely saying yes to yourself and the self-care that you need. However, I think for the most part, you should just invite things in. Like The Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes is a really good book about this concept. You need to have at least a year of yes where you're saying yes to various opportunities and just overall having welcoming energy and an abundant mindset in your life. For instance, in November 2020, I created a Twitter account because I wanted to follow BLM activists. And at this time, I was searching for basically my next big thing. Like I personally feel like every 2 years, I have a really lucky circumstance that changes the trajectory of my life. That's just my own personal belief and something that I manifest for myself throughout my life. And so I was just kind of thinking about what would that next thing be? And then I saw on Twitter this product designer that I followed who was also an activist of sorts. I was a product designer at the time, so I followed product designers. She tweeted that there was this house in LA that allegedly Paris Hilton had lived in. They love to say that. And it was called Launch House. And it was supposed to be a house for about 30 founders to live together in this house. And at the time, I had just started to wind down this consultancy. I was the founder of Bridge Strategy. I have another YouTube video about how I set up that consultancy, but it was basically a consultancy for small businesses and startups. As a result, identified as a founder. And so I randomly applied to this founder house. And I didn't know about Silicon Valley or the concept of hacker houses, but then I moved into Launch House and I just said yes to it, even though I didn't know anyone. I didn't have a single personal connection to anyone in the house, and I was about to live with 20 of them. And I know a lot of other people told me that they were actually offered spots in Launch House and then they said no. And then Launch House ended up getting canceled. And of course, there was a lot of controversy tied up in that. But overall, the fact that I said yes to that, it did change the trajectory of my life. Like it literally led me to all of my best friends. It exposed me to Silicon Valley. It's definitely the reason that I started my company and had the trajectory of success that it did. And I think that it's really because I'm such a person to say yes to literally everything. And so I think it's important to say yes to things in your life in order to stay lucky. And I think that that speaks to the passage that I read about being lucky, because it just goes to show basically the fact that curiosity is what leads to luckiness. And I think a part of being curious is saying yes to things and welcoming in that abundant energy. Tip number 2, always be really transparent about what you want and when you want it, and literally just increase your surface area of being lucky by telling the world what you want. So that's why I love making social media content, because you can maximize the reach of your goals and learnings that you have, and you just let people know that you exist, remind people of you, and that is truly how you start to get lucky. When many people know about your goals and your aspirations, and they know about you, then you're top of mind for more people, and they think of you and they invite you to things, they give you opportunities. There's just so much that can come from more people knowing about you and your goals. And so that's why personally, insincerity is one of my biggest pet peeves, and inversely, sincerity is one of the things that I value most. And I feel like I am extremely sincere, extremely transparent, very honest. I'm an open book with everyone, and usually if I have a goal in mind, mind or even something that I'm struggling with, I'm open about it because usually I come across solutions. Like the greatest business solutions that I've ever found in my life have come about because I met a random stranger and was really transparent about what I'm struggling with right now. And then someone with domain expertise in that area randomly came across something that reminded them of me. They sent it to me. And then I was able to come up with solutions because I had multiple people's input and was able to get a lot of data points in order to make a sound and an informed decision. So I think being really transparent is really important. Like for instance, I was manifesting for myself that I would be able to investigate the kind of social club scene in New York City because I was curious about it being able to elevate my network in a sense. I was wondering if it would be worth it. And I told one of my friends that last week she invited me to a cocktail hour that she hosted at her house. And then at the cocktail hour, she ended up inviting this guy that happens to be a part of one of the social clubs in New York City. And I told him that I've been manifesting this for myself recently. And then literally this morning, he DM'd me that he's hosting a dinner at a social club. And he just randomly invited me to this random dinner. I don't know anyone, but again, I'm going to say yes. And it's fulfilling my goals because I voice the goals that I have. Similarly, another story along these lines is I was at a Y Combinator founder event a couple of months ago, and I told them that I was really struggling with what to do with my company. I didn't really know what direction to take it, how to solve certain problems. And then this one guy told me that he actually had this exact same problem 2 years ago. And then he ended up like having a call with me later on that week to really brainstorm with me what the solution could be. And then he gave me a solution, and then he turned out to be a really great advisor throughout me executing on the solution. And then he ended up introducing me to someone else that really helped me solve it. So yeah, it's just important. Like if I wasn't vulnerable the first time that I met him about what I was struggling with at that YC event, then I don't know what would have happened. Maybe I never would have thought of that solution. And so I think it's really important to always be transparent about your goals with everyone. Okay, my next big tip, if you want to be really lucky, you have to consistently be hyper aware of vibes. And so what I mean by this is if you really, really want something, you should look deep into what it actually means to live the life that you want and really deeply understand and be hyper aware of the vibes of what you want and kind of interpret if the vibes are actually welcoming to you. So I know this sounds very woo-woo, but for instance, I'll give you an example. I really wanted this fellowship that this VC was running, and I talked to a lot of people about it. I had a really good first round interview. They took me to the second round, and then I was slowly thinking throughout the second round of the interview that I wasn't really vibing with that partner. And although I really did want this fellowship because they had a lot of good perks, I kept on thinking I need to be hyper aware of the vibes that are happening, and I wasn't really getting like the most welcoming vibes from this VC partner. And it made me think like, okay, if I ever actually did do this fellowship, it would be a really big commitment. It would probably distract me from some of the other goals that I have going on. I ultimately thought, you know what, it's not the worst thing in the world if I don't end up getting this fellowship because I'm not getting the most welcoming vibes. And then I got rejected from the fellowship. And so while hindsight could be 2020, I also think it was important for me to feel that because I just could feel that the energy wasn't there. And I think this could be applicable to dating as well. Like it's really important to stay hyper aware of the vibes so that you know what wants you, and then you can be able to dismiss what doesn't want you and accept that as an objective fact. It's like a puzzle piece. Like it's not anything personal against you if the puzzle piece doesn't fit. And you should just know and be able to recognize when those puzzle pieces don't fit. And I think that that's how you can be lucky, is just like keeping your eyes and ears open at all times to what is welcoming to you and following those paths, and then cutting off negative energy when things are not welcoming to you. One way to get infected with lucky girl syndrome is to start living the life that you want before you even have it. So for instance, if you want to live in a really nice high-rise apartment, you should just get that apartment. And even if you don't think that you have the money to afford it, if you get the apartment and then you make a goal that you are going to afford this apartment, it's a forcing function for you to start looking into all of the actions that you need to take in order to afford this apartment. Guaranteed, if you are driven enough and you really believe in yourself and you're confident and you have lucky girl syndrome, you will figure out how to afford this apartment. That's what I did with this apartment. Likewise, I think, for instance, if someone wants to be a founder, like I wanted to be a founder, I just started acting like a founder before I had even quit my job. I started telling people that I was the founder of a startup. I woke up every day and tried to talk to users. I was talking to people about hiring them and voicing all of the goals that I had around hiring and being really transparent with everyone that I was talking to so that they were aware of my goals. And I just started acting like a founder before the supply chain was set up, before the product was launched, before we had a customer, before I even quit my job. I just started really thinking deeply through all of the things that I need to do to be a founder, and I just started living that life. And then I was basically faking it until I made it, and I was manifesting it. And then eventually the pieces, the venture capital, the me working on the supply chain, the product launching, us getting customers, it started to fall into place. And I knew that it was right for me because the vibes felt welcoming. I didn't feel like I was pushing a boulder uphill. I felt like a boulder was going downhill, and I didn't even have to push it. And so I was aware of the vibes. I said yes to the opportunities that came my way, and I was constantly acting on the life that I wanted before I had it. And then I did have it. Some food for thought. My next tip for infecting yourself with lucky girl syndrome is to set goals. So I personally have set quarterly goals since Q1 of 2023, and every quarter I revisit these goals very similar to a company. And I do basically an evaluation of the previous quarter's goals, and then I usually make new goals based on those goals. Plus I add any additional goals based on any hobbies I wanted to pursue or interests that I had, etc. After I do this goal setting, I basically put a bunch of reminders in my calendar for doing those things and executing on those goals, and I start putting the things in motion that I want to do. Like for instance, one of my quarterly goals a couple years ago was to solve Rubik's Cube, so I immediately bought a Rubik's Cube, and then I set up a block on my calendar to solve the Rubik's Cube. But some of the goals are more long-term, like to work out at least 5 days a week. And so I did put that on my calendar to work out 5 days a week, but I had to make sure that I was continuously maintaining that. And so I made sure to put the steps into place that I needed in order to execute on these goals. But also something else that I realized was by doing the quarterly goals and writing them down and always having them in the back of my mind, I was constantly aware of the goals that I wanted for myself. Somehow, even if I wasn't consciously working towards them, they would just work out because I had written them down and I had kind of set the intention in my subconscious to accomplish that goal eventually. And then it would actually happen. So I would just get lucky and these things would start happening that I wanted to happen. And it was almost like a manifestation practice through my quarterly goal setting. So for instance, one of my goals 2 quarters ago was to be a more intentional shopper. I wanted to make sure that I was buying pieces that I really liked, that I loved everything in my closet, and that I wasn't spending a crazy amount of money on clothes, but on pieces that could be styled well together and styled differently, and that felt like core pieces. And then the following quarter, when I did my quarterly goal check-in, I realized that I actually did indeed accomplish this goal because it just so happened that one of my best friends, Sita, wanted to pursue a styling career, and so she used me as one of her initial examples, and then she basically helped me do a closet clean out, and then she created a shop my link where she gave me a bunch of products that she thinks that I should buy in order to create a more holistic, well-rounded closet. And so through her, I became a more intentional shopper, and I never even told her that one of my goals that quarter was to be a more intentional shopper. But the fact that I was just welcoming that energy into my life and the fact that I had made it a goal, I think I had voiced to her at some point that I was thinking about just like my shopping values in general. And then she immediately like made me one of her first customers for her styling business. And so I feel really, really lucky in that way that I was able to accomplish my goals with one of my best friends, and that I did it kind of unintentionally, but I still did it just because it was on my goal list. So that's another way to get lucky, is by setting goals. My next tip for being lucky is being confident. You basically have to know that what's meant for you will be. And this also helps with my final tip, which is detaching from outcomes. You basically have to be okay with things not working out the way that you want it to, and you have to not take life so seriously. And being confident and detaching from outcomes is really all related, because if you are really confident in yourself, even if things don't work out, you will know that you are still the greatest person at the end of the day. You can still maintain happiness and joy and get it from yourself and only yourself, and you don't have to rely on extrinsic validation in order to achieve your own goals. And so in that way, you can detach from outcomes, but just also knowing and recognizing that you should detach from outcomes and not be so disappointed when things don't happen. Don't take life with such serious weight. This is all really important for you to know about, and it's a way to make sure that you always get lucky, because then you will always be optimizing for a life that is meant for you, and you will be able to maintain a sense of stoicism and happiness and stability when things don't necessarily work out, and you will still maintain the confidence that you are lucky and that you will be able to seek out the things that you desire. So for instance, the summer before my senior year of college, I was really, really set on getting a Goldman Sachs internship, and they accept less than 1% of their applicants for their legal division internship. And so because I knew that, I actually went for their compliance division internship because I knew it was slightly easier. It wasn't branded as legal, so it was also a good pre-law internship because I wanted to go to law school. possible then, but it wasn't necessarily like the gold standard. And so I was kind of networking for legal and compliance, and I was getting those welcoming vibes, and I said yes to every single chat that I could. And I really like voiced to so many people that it was my goal to get this internship. I networked with every single person that I could find on LinkedIn that had Goldman Sachs legal, Goldman Sachs compliance. I had like 3 coffee chats a day for 8 weeks, basically this one summer before the internship. And I have another YouTube video on how I got that internship. But in any case, I did all of the things that I mentioned on how to get lucky. I followed all those rules, but the entire time I just stayed confident that what's meant for me will be. And I tried to stay hyper aware of the vibes if they were welcoming to me. And I also was still able to detach from the fact that, okay, if I don't get this Goldman internship, it's okay. There are other really good pre-law internships that I can get. I was trying to network for all of them, but I really had my heart set on Goldman. And I actually ended up getting it. And it was one of those moments where I just felt like the puzzle piece really fit. And I was just so proud of myself and the work that I did in order to get there. And I really felt lucky. So yeah, these are my 7 tips on how to get lucky and how you can get lucky girl syndrome. So hopefully you get sick with it too. Hope this was helpful.
Trying to be all that I can be for you.